good girl to keep me grounded, to keep my mind set and keep me focused. My house not that big, but maybe yours is. Swear you got enough for both of us. Would love to pay you up until you shopping, get you a little Gucci and some Louis, put my little baby in a big ring. Girl, you ain't never met another like me. No, maybe we can go anywhere that you wanna go, cause we ain't gotta take it slow. Do you wanna fall?
Guess who's back? Back again. It's only bloody me, and better still, I've come back with an updated tattoo tour. I released my previous tattoo tour about this time last year, and I'm very happy to report that since I filmed that video, I've now got a ton more tattoos, and I've actually finished one of my sleeves. Also, probably my most popular video is my future tattoo plans video, so if you haven't already, check that out if you fancy comparing what I said in that video to what I've actually ended up with. As I said, I have one sleeve finished, my right sleeve. Hopefully this time next year the left one will be finished too, and I can finally move on to tattooing the rest of my body. So if we start with my right sleeve, I have this little axe just here on my wrist. This was just a cool little gap filler as I had this tiny space, and I just thought that an axe would look really cool in it. This tattoo was done by Joey Salvage in Brighton, who is my go-to artist at the moment. I love his work, how simple and bold it is, and on top of that, he's just a really top geezer who makes me feel really comfortable, which can't go understated. Joey works out of Magic Tattoo in Brighton. Check him out. I love the detail of the wood on the handle, and then how he's used red to add some background to the piece and just fill out the space really nicely. Then next to that, I have this mermaid holding up a skull, also done by Joey. This is definitely up there as one of my favourite tattoos. I just think it's so fucking rad. I asked Joey to incorporate black shading into the scales, and I think it just turned out real fucking cool. Then next to the mermaid, I have this dagger going through a heart. Again, this one was to fill an awkward gap, and I'm just so ridiculously happy with how it turned out. I love the leaves that Joey added around the heart and just the extra lines around it, which give it a really cool dynamic and just a sense of motion that the blade has just freshly gone through the heart. God, that sounded pretentious, didn't it? Fucking hell. Dynamics and a sense of motion. If we then move around to the inside of my arm, I have this Bible on my wrist. I talked more extensively about this one in my last tattoo tour, but the long and the short of it is I was raised in a Christian household, although I'm now atheist, and this is just a reminder of my roots. I think this is such a cool image, especially with the blood dripping from it, and I think Joey did such a great job on this. Then above it, I have this black old school Gretsch guitar with a flower next to it. This one, like most of my tattoos, was done by Joey. This is my favourite looking guitar in the world. I play guitar, and this reminds me of my dad. He bought me a Gretsch guitar, and then he bought it back off me, and then he gave it back to me a few years later. So every time I look at this, I think of him. Again, I think Joey did such a great job with this. He was stressing about it a bit, bless him, just because of all the lines and everything, and he used a smaller needle than he usually would. But I think it just turned out incredible, and I'm really happy with it. Above the guitar, I then have this eagle, which I've named Eddie. I love traditional eagle tattoos. I think they're so iconic, and I knew that I had to have this on me. This was a piece that I picked from Joey's flash that happened to just fit the gaps that I had here really well. It did feel pretty uncomfortable when I was getting it, just like, especially on the ditch, when Joey was pulling the lines through the ditch, it felt like literal wet fire, but it was totally worth it to get such a great piece on me. If we then move around to the front of my forearm, I have this little heart that was done by Aaron Fitchett, who works out of Gold Iron Tattoos Club in Brighton. It says True Love on it. It's got these flowers around it, and then like these banners coming off it. Then above it, another piece done by Aaron Fitchett out of Gold Irons is this Sailor Jerry Flash piece. It's a Navy girl. I love this piece of flash. I saw this tattoo on someone else many years ago, and it's the piece that actually made me fall in love with traditional tattoos and want to get sleeves, and look at where we are now. Above the Jerry girl, I've got another piece done by Aaron Fitchett. It's like a flower filler with an arrow going through it. It kind of sits on the top of my forearm / going over my ditch. Again, I love this one. Then if we move around to my elbow, I have the number 13 in this red text. 13 is my lucky number. It comes up a lot in my life, so I really wanted to get this somewhere in my body, and it just happened to fit the elbow really well. I originally wanted like some flowers around it, but we couldn't make it work with the space, and I ended up giving Joey free rein to just fill the space however he saw fit. and ended up doing all these swirly lines, which I think look really cool and is not something that you see a lot on traditional tattoos. If we then move into my inner bicep, I have this little butterfly. Again, this one was a gap filler that I think is a really fucking cool gap filler. This is probably the worst experience I've had in terms of pain, or I guess sensation, whilst I was getting tattooed, just because it sits right over my funny bone, which was just the most bizarre sensation because the bone sticks out and I can still kind of feel it now. The tattoo looks fucking great though. Next to the butterfly, I then have this yellow flower filler. Again, this one was to just fill space, although I do think it looks pretty sick. If we then move around, I have this huge black and yellow cobra that takes up most of my inner bicep. This one was pretty spicy, though 100% worth it. I love how much black is in it, and I think it just looks so gnarly. I then just have this little random red star. Again, this was just a gap filler, and then I've got another star below it and above it. I then have the TCB symbol. My grandmother was a huge Elvis fan, and I grew up thinking that those guys in the 50s were the coolest looking motherfuckers in the world, and I think this is just such an iconic image, and I had to have it on me. Above the TCB symbol, I then have these coffin nails. I had such a long and awkward gap here, and Joey did really well to draw something to fit it so well. These don't have any particular significance, they just look really cool. If we then move around to my outer bicep, I have this panther head. Again, this is such an iconic image in traditional tattoos, and I just had to get one on me. This one was done by Aaron Fitchett, as was the lady head that's above it. This is just a really pretty lady with a rose in her hair. I think Aaron is the king of lady head tattoos, and I absolutely had to get one done by him. Then lastly on this arm, or I think this is the last one, I can't see all of them, I have this boxer and a rose on the back of my arm. I love traditional boxer tattoos, and I wanted to get this guy with taped fists, like an old school bare knuckle fighter, and a handsome geezer to boot. I fucking love this one. Right, on to the left. If we then start at the bottom of my arm, I have this portrait of a 1950s greaser. This one was done by Aaron Fitchett. As I said earlier when I was talking about the TCB tattoo, I grew up obsessed with 1950s imagery, and in particular of greasers. I fucking love this tattoo. I think it's just so cool, and Aaron really captured what I was going for here. I do wish that I healed it a little bit better. I got this tattoo done when I was younger and stupider, and I didn't give it as much love as I should have at the time when it was healing, and I let it dry out too much and get all scabby. And even though I've had it touched up, it doesn't look as good as if I'd just been better to it in the first place. Oh well, you live and you learn. Above the greaser, I then have this swallow. Again, this was done by Aaron Fitchett. This is such an iconic image amongst old school sailor tattoos, and I had to get my own. The swallow represents the idea of returning home, which I think is a really cool sentiment. Next to the swallow, I've then got this broken arrow tattoo, which was done by Joey Salvage. This is just a cool little gap filler tattoo. Then in between the greaser and the swallow, I've got this little black and gold cross. This one was also done by Joey, and like the Bible tattoo I have on my wrist, it represents my Christian upbringing. If we then move into my inner forearm, I have this eagle sitting on top of a skull. This is something that I picked out of Joey's Flash. I saw it about a year before I got it, and I just kept coming back to it. And I think it just fills up my wrist so perfectly. It was like it was meant to be. I think it's such a cool image. Above the eagle skull, I have this clipper ship done by Aaron Fitchett with the words "Homeward Bound" on it and a banner. Clipper ships are such an iconic image in traditional tattoos. I had to get one. I love the little birds and the red background, which gives this kind of sunset kind of vibe. If we then move up onto my bicep, I have this pin-up girl tattoo. I mentioned in my last tattoo tour, and I won't get into it too much again, but this is a rework of a really awful tattoo that I got done when I was 19. I had Aaron Fitchett rework it for me, and he did the best he could to salvage it. This tattoo isn't my favourite, but I think we've all got some tattoos that we're not big fans of, you know? Don't trust people with only good tattoos. Next to the pin-up girl, I've then got another heart tattoo done by Aaron. This one says "Mum" on it. As you can probably guess, I'm a big fan of my mum, and I wanted to show that on my skin. I think this is such a great take on such a classic design by Aaron. Then lastly, I have this anchor done by Joey Salvage. This fit the gap really nicely next to the pin-up girl, and again, it's a really classic sailor image and a reminder to stay grounded and shit. Right, so those are all my current tattoos. As I said, hopefully by this time next year, I'll have this sleeve finished too. I hope you guys found this entertaining and were able to follow along with all my nonsense. If you did enjoy the video, give it a like and hit the subscribe button and all that other YouTube bollocks. If you like the music that you're hearing in the background, it was actually all produced by me. I have another channel where I post beats/instrumentals that I've made for singers to use to write songs to. So if that is something that you're interested in, I'll put a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.